A black hotel cleaner answered a phone call in Dutch in front of a billionaire. By the next day, he summoned her. Zoe's phone buzzed while she was scrubbing the marble floor of the Grand Plaza Hotel's lavish lobby. Under normal circumstances, she would never dare answer during work hours. That was rule number 1 according to Manager Richards, especially for housekeeping staff, but she recognized the number immediately. It was the university. After 6 failed attempts to secure a scholarship for her master's degree in linguistics, this call had the power to change everything. "Just a second," Zoe murmured, slipping behind an ornate marble column. In that brief moment, her entire life shifted. "Zoe Johnson," she answered quietly, careful not to draw attention as guests moved through the lobby. The voice on the other end spoke flawless Dutch. It was Professor Van Houten from the University of Amsterdam. Without hesitation, Zoe replied in the same language. Her pronunciation was smooth, natural, and confident as they discussed the details of her international application. She explained with concern that her motivation letter may have arrived late due to postal delays. That was when she felt it. The sudden stillness around her. Zoe looked up. Standing only a few feet away was Richard Coleman, the billionaire owner of the hotel chain, staring at her with open astonishment. Beside him, Manager Richards stood frozen, eyes burning with fury. Zoe's throat tightened. "I need to go. I'll call you back later," she said hurriedly in Dutch before ending the call. "Johnson, my office. Now." The command cut through the air. The walk down to the cramped administrative office in the basement felt endless. Zoe could feel the stares of her co-workers, some sympathetic, others barely hiding their satisfaction. At 29, she was the only black woman in housekeeping with a college degree, a fact Manager Richards constantly chose to forget. "You know the rules," Richards snapped the moment the door closed. "No phones during work hours, especially not in public spaces." And what language was that? French? Dutch, Zoe corrected instinctively, immediately regretting it. "I don't care if it was Martian," Richards shot back. "What matters is that Mr. Coleman saw a cleaning lady neglecting her duties to chat on the phone in the lobby." The injustice burned. White receptionists took personal calls all the time without consequences. But Zoe understood the pattern. It was always the same. "You're reassigned to the convention center bathrooms for the next 3 months," Richards continued coldly. "Maybe there you can practice all the languages you want without embarrassing this hotel." Zoe's stomach dropped. The convention center meant double workloads after corporate events, with no overtime pay. Richards' favorite punishment. You should be grateful you're not fired. "You can go." That night stretched on endlessly. In her tiny apartment shared with 2 nurses, Zoe cried quietly, staring at her framed linguistics degree and international certificates hanging on a peeling wall. 6 years of cleaning rooms, 6 years of saving for graduate school, 6 years of resumes sent, interviews attended, and silence afterward. The next morning, she arrived early, determined to remain professional despite everything. That was when the front desk phone rang. "Zoe Johnson," called Jennifer, the head receptionist. "Human Resources needs you immediately." HR was located on the top floor, next to the executive offices. An unfamiliar world for housekeeping staff. In the elevator, Zoe felt invisible as usual, surrounded by executives discussing million-dollar deals without noticing her presence. "Ms. Johnson?" the HR director said when she entered. "Please have a seat." Zoe braced herself. Termination seemed inevitable. Instead, the director said, "Mr. Coleman has requested a meeting with you." The owner's office was larger than Zoe's entire apartment. Richard Coleman, 45, legendary for transforming failing hotels into luxury icons, studied her closely. "Dutch, French, Italian, Mandarin," he said bluntly, scanning a file. "Correct?" Zoe blinked. "How did you... my resume?" I requested it after hearing you yesterday, Coleman replied. Honors degree in linguistics from Georgetown. Fluent in 6 languages, 2 Asian, and you've been cleaning my hotel for 6 years. What Zoe didn't know was that this moment wasn't accidental. What no one in that hotel realized was that a simple phone call in Dutch was about to expose years of discrimination that had buried extraordinary talent behind cleaning carts and uniforms. For a moment, silence filled the room. 6 years, Coleman repeated, folding his arms. Why is someone with your education cleaning bathrooms? Instead of handling international communications, Zoe inhaled deeply. I sent 47 resumes to this hotel's international department. Everyone ignored. I applied for internal transfer 12 times. All denied. By whom? Manager Richards and Thomas Whitmore, Director of Operations. Coleman wrote down the names calmly. What's interesting, he said slowly, is that Whitmore constantly complains about lacking multilingual staff, especially for Asian conferences. What he didn't say was that he had already hired investigators to examine the unusually high turnover of qualified non-white employees across his hotels. Tomorrow, Coleman continued, we host a trade conference with Dutch and Chinese executives. I need someone fluent in both languages. And you want me to clean their rooms? Zoe asked dryly. Coleman smiled faintly. I want you to serve as our temporary international relations coordinator. Starting today. Salary, $5,000 per week. Zoe nearly dropped her bag. Why me? Because I heard you speak Dutch like a native, because you're qualified, and because something is deeply wrong in my company. An hour later, Zoe stepped into the elevator wearing a new badge with full system access. On her way to HR, she crossed paths with Manager Richards. The shock on Richards' face was priceless. Johnson! What are you doing on this floor without a uniform? Ms. Richards, Zoe replied calmly. International Relations Coordinator. Direct request of Mr. Coleman. Richards turned pale. Impossible. You're not qualified. Georgetown. 6 languages, including Mandarin and Dutch, Zoe said evenly. My resume has been in the hotel's files for 6 years, along with 12 transfer requests. She walked away as Richards stammered. In HR, Zoe met an unexpected ally, Zoe Williams, a newly hired recruitment analyst. I saw your file when I started, Williams admitted. I couldn't understand why you were in housekeeping. Whitmore shut me down when I asked. That afternoon, as Zoe prepared conference materials, she noticed something alarming. The Mandarin translations were culturally inappropriate, potentially offensive. She corrected everything immediately. How did you know? Coleman asked, watching from the doorway. The translator knows vocabulary, not culture, Zoe explained. Whitmore claimed he hired the best, Coleman said. He hired someone without checking credentials, Zoe replied, pointing out a critical error. The next day, the conference began. Zoe moved effortlessly among executives, switching between Dutch and Mandarin, building connections with ease. During a break, Whitmore approached her with a tight smile. Impressive work. Richards misjudged you. Interesting, Zoe replied calmly. Considering my Mandarin fluency was clearly listed, yet the hotel paid $50,000 for faulty translations. Whitmore froze. What he didn't know was that Zoe now had access to the contracts. The translation company belonged to his niece, unqualified, overpriced, and responsible for years of costly errors. On day 3, a Dutch executive recognized, Zoe, you wrote that article on linguistic variation in international business, he exclaimed. I've cited your work twice. Colleagues gathered around her as Coleman watched Whitmore grow increasingly uneasy. By day 4, Zoe noticed Whitmore escorting a nervous young woman carrying a final translation folder. One glance confirmed the errors were back. She rushed. To Coleman, I have proof, Zoe said. Years of inflated payments, systematic rejection of qualified candidates. HR rushed in moments later with hiring records showing clear racial and gender bias. When Whitmore burst in blaming Zoe, Coleman calmly closed the door. "Explain the $50,000 spent on incompetent translations," Coleman said quietly. Whitmore panicked. "Your niece," Coleman continued. "No credentials. Fake certification." Security escorted him out hours later. In a packed auditorium, Coleman revealed everything: charts, data, contracts. "Dr. Zoe Johnson," he announced, "saved this company from disaster. Whitmore was terminated, Richard suspended, and, effective immediately," Coleman concluded, "Dr. Zoe Johnson is our new Global Director of Internal Communications." Applause erupted, especially from the cleaning staff. Later that night in her new office, Zoe finally cried. Not from sadness, but release. "I did it, Mom," she whispered into the phone. 6 months later, Zoe stood as Vice President of Diversity and International Relations, leading a revolution across the industry. It all began with a single phone. Call in Dutch. And it proved one simple truth: talent exists everywhere. Opportunity does not.